This is VOA Africa. Hello, I'm Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori in for #the UWAT. It's Thursday, December the 10th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We are working to help keep you informed about what is going on, and we appreciate your staying with us on Africa 54. We begin our broadcast on Thursday in West Africa, where a winner has been announced in the Ghanaian presidential vote. Nana Akufo-Addo has been re-elected as president of Ghana. Akufo-Addo won a second term, defeating former President John Mahama with 6.7 million votes, or 51.6% of the vote. Mahama garnered 6.2 million votes, or 47.4%. After a two-day wait, the winner was announced Wednesday evening by Ghana's Electoral Commission. Sounds of jubilation could be heard throughout Accra as the results were announced. The chair of the Electoral Commission, Jean Mensa, hailed the smooth and peaceful nature of the election, saying, quote, "I indicate that this is a historic election because for the first time in the history of our country, the election day went by without major incidents and occurrences." The election results were revealed one day later than expected, sparking some protests by the opposition National Democratic Party in the capital on Wednesday. Ahead of the election, Mahama and Akufo-Addo signed a peace pact committing to non-violence regardless of the outcome of the vote. However, the Ghana Police Service has recorded a total of 61 electoral and post-electoral incidents nationwide, 6 which involved gunshots, resulting in the death of 5 people across the nation. 19 others have been injured. In its report from more than 4,000 observers, the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers found the elections were generally conducted according to Ghana's electoral laws and procedures. The coalition says there were some isolated challenges, but they did not undermine the process's overall credibility. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is calling for peace and security in East Africa, while refugees fleeing the fighting in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region say they don't know the fate of their families left behind as they arrive at remote camps in Sudan. VOA's Heather Murdock reports from the Rakouba camp in eastern Sudan.
Mothers here say they tried to cover their children's eyes as they fled the violence. But some as young as 4 years old still asked, who killed those people? When they saw slaughtered bodies strewn on the streets. This camp houses many of the more than 46,000 refugees who recently fled the war in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Hundreds more are arriving every day, many telling similarly gruesome stories.
I saw so many people die. The situation became so difficult, so we had to flee. We have never seen such terrible killings.
The fighting began in November as the Ethiopian central government and local forces battled for control of the Tigray region. Aid workers at this camp say there are not enough resources to support the influx of refugees, especially the most vulnerable ones.
There is not enough food for them, special cases. The pregnant women, the lactating women, TB cases, there's not enough food for them.
Many families were split up during the chaos and now fear their loved ones are dead.
I wasn't near my 18-year-old son when the war broke out and people ran. When the mortars started falling, I ran out alone. He wasn't behind me, and I only took these clothes.
There is a lot currently unknown about civilians still inside the war zone as they are largely cut off from aid workers and journalists. But reports say a huge number of people there are in desperate need of immediate help, and tensions on the ground are growing. Heather Murdock, VOA News, Rakouba, Sudan.
U.S. President Donald Trump's order for most U.S. troops to leave Somalia comes as the country prepares to hold a parliamentary election this month and presidential election in February. Earlier this week, as part of our in-depth coverage of the pullout, we spoke with the former Deputy Director of Somalia's intelligence agency, Abdul Salam Yusuf Guled, who says the U.S. decision is good news for terrorist group Al-Shabaab, which he worries might launch fresh attacks against African Union and Somali government targets. For more insight on the Somali troop drawdown, I spoke with VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb.
The reasoning has not fully been laid out for Pentagon reporters. We do know that this was a discussion that came into play as they were deciding to pull troops out of Afghanistan, reduce force numbers in Iraq as well. We do know that this president had promised that a campaign promise from back in 2015, 2016, and had promised to say that he was going to bring forces home. And so in this sense, for the administration, it's a way to bring forces home. However, we've been getting mixed messages, as you know, if we've been following this for several days now. The Africa Command head, General Stephen Townsend, has stressed that this is not a giving up, so to speak, on Somalia. This is a repositioning of forces, and they plan to continue the fight against Al-Shabaab and against some of the remnants of ISIS that are in Somalia. So we will see the majority of these forces, while they're planning to leave Somalia, they'll be going to areas like Kenya or Djibouti, and very few of them will actually be coming home. So there's a lot of confusion as to why this happened and why it's happening now. But I will say one thing that a lot of people haven't pointed out, and I noticed in the statement that the Pentagon released, is they said that these forces are going to be coming out by early 2021. They didn't give a specific number of forces, and they did not give a specific time. So that leaves a lot of wiggle room for the Pentagon to bring those forces back if they see that they are needed.
Well, someone may ask, there is going to be a new administration. Is there a possibility something could change, that decision could be perhaps reversed on consideration of the circumstances of the time?
Oh, absolutely. We have no idea how the Biden administration is going to react to this repositioning of forces. We don't know yet. We simply just do not know. We have to wait and see. And we probably won't know for sure until at least the February timeframe as we see things unfold. But again, early 2021 could mean February. It doesn't mean that it has to be done before Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2021, when President Trump leaves office. So I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing a slow, deliberate transfer of forces. The overall goal that the Pentagon wanted to do is bring back as many as it could to prepare for a near-peer competition against a Russia or a China. But it looks like because the threat remains in Somalia, and because it is the biggest threat considered in Africa by many Pentagon sources and by the Inspector General at the Pentagon, that this is just not the place where they can effectively pull out people. They can pull them out of the country of Somalia, but they may still need them on hand nearby.
Now, the U.S. Command spokesperson, Colonel Chris Cairns, it says that, they will still continue putting pressure on the Al-Shabaab insurgents. What does that mean?
So the pressure will remain in multiple ways. So I've been told by officials that they still want to continue the training. The training may not happen in Somalia as it has been happening. It may happen in Kenya more, which has also been a way of training forces. That could be one area. Another area, as we've been following for the last 4 years, is the uptick of airstrikes against Al-Shabaab and even ISIS in Somalia. That is expected to continue because the Trump administration had laid out that plan that they wanted to target Al-Shabaab, keep them on the run. And the best way, in their opinion, to keep Shabaab on the run was through the airstrikes, because you don't have to have as many U.S. forces on the ground to conduct these airstrikes, and you can train your Somali partners to help conduct these, to help position their forces in the areas that they need to be to help with these airstrikes as well. So that will continue. I've been told by officials that the U.S. has been training the Danab forces. That was something initially laid out where the United States was looking to train about 4,000 of those forces. They're not there yet. I think they've trained somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 now. So we're going to be seeing that training continue as well. And that has been a very successful piece of the puzzle when it comes to fighting al-Shabaab, if you speak to Pentagon officials.
But then what are you hearing from Somali security officials, or experts at least?
Well, of course, my colleagues at Voice of America have been hearing concern from Somali officials because obviously any sort of announcement like this, the first worry is that the United States is going to up and leave. There have been talks for years now about the African forces that are also in Somalia helping the African Union forces, that they're pulling out. So there is a concern that everybody is trying to get out at once. And this is a critical time where there is still a threat. There has been progress made. This is not the time to make drastic changes. So that's what we're hearing. My colleagues have been hearing from Somalia. Again, I want to caution, everything in this announcement has been very fluid. No specific numbers, no specific timelines. I don't think this is one of those instances where the United States is just going to abandon Somalia. I think there's going to be deliberate movements being made in the next couple of weeks.
That was VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Bob. After 4 years of President Donald Trump's America First foreign policy, which cut the number of U.S. troops deployed overseas and called on allies to pay more for their defense, Americans are waiting to see what military policy will look like under President-elect Joe Biden. Here again is VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Bob.
President-elect Joe Biden says he will shift away from the America First mantra that has defined President Donald Trump's administration.
America's back. We're going to be back in the game. It's not American alone.
And favor alliances with traditional allies, such as NATO.
The Trump administration has had a very confrontational approach with our NATO allies and partners. And I think the Biden administration is going to have a much more cooperative approach.
Trump said NATO allies have abused the United States' generosity, especially wealthy nations like Germany. He ordered a reduction of nearly 12,000 U.S. troops from bases there.
We don't want to be the suckers anymore. The United States has been taken advantage of for 25 years, both on trade and on the military. We're protecting Germany, so we're reducing the force because they're not paying their bills. It's very simple. They're delinquent.
Biden will likely reverse that move, experts say, while taking a cooler approach than Trump has taken to communications with Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
I'll be a president who will stand with our allies and friends and make it clear to our adversaries the days of cozying up to dictators is over.
To tackle the North Korean threat, Trump tried diplomacy with the North Korean leader, reducing large-scale U.S.-South Korea military exercises so Pyongyang would stop testing long-range missiles.
I think that is a very good deal for the United States because the benefits of having North Korea no longer able to test, I think, are much greater than the costs of foregoing these big exercises, which are largely choreographed and largely for show.
While it is unclear whether Biden will continue to cut these large-scale exercises, experts say Biden's initial focus will be on strengthening the U.S.-South Korea relationship after the Trump administration's back and forth with a longtime military ally over cost for U.S. military presence on the peninsula.
South Korea is paying a substantial part of the cost of us having our troops there. And so let's just end this, bickering over pennies on the dollar of who's paying what. I think that issue, they could make that go away overnight.
After nearly 2 decades fighting terrorism alongside numerous global allies in Iraq and Afghanistan, President-elect Joe Biden has supported similar U.S. troop reductions to those President Trump is currently executing in these countries. However, in Syria, while Trump tried a complete withdrawal twice, Biden has said these withdrawals were equivalent to the U.S. breaking its word and turning its back on its Kurdish-led allies fighting Islamic State there.
10,000 of them lost their lives on a commitment and we trained them and we were there to help them organize. And they did it. And then we left them. Nobody in the world is prepared to believe our word anymore.
As the new U.S. national security team takes shape, threats around the world will not only remain, but evolve, with many across the globe looking to the U.S. for answers and leadership. Carla Bob, VOA News, Washington.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a new documentary traces the history of racial profiling of African Americans. We'll be right back.
Is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them
and bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linoch Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Angry Kenyan medical students and doctors held a vigil outside the health ministry in Nairobi on Wednesday. They are decrying the death of a 28-year-old physician from COVID-19 as the latest example of dangerous and unjust working conditions in government hospitals. Stephen Moguso was employed on a temporary contract and had not been paid for the 5 months he had been employed in a coronavirus ward at a public hospital in the town of Machakos. Now his body is lying in the morgue after he died from the virus because his wife, also a doctor, can't pay the bill of more than $9,000 according to a letter his union shared with Reuters. Now, colleagues say the family is the latest victim of a healthcare system that is sending medical staff to treat COVID-19 patients without adequate protection, also failing to ensure them for treatment when they fall ill and cheating them out of their wages. The health ministry did not immediately respond to requests for comment, according to Reuters. British health officials are warning that people with a significant history of allergic reactions should not receive the new coronavirus vaccine that was rolled out in a mass vaccination program on Tuesday, pending investigations of 2 adverse reactions. Britain is the first Western country to begin the mass vaccinations, as Henry Ridgewell reports from London.
Filipino nurse Leo Quiano works in Britain's National Health Service and was among the first to receive the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine.
I feel more confident and safe because I've been COVID positive before and I was admitted in the hospital. There's a thorough studies and research before the vaccine comes out, so I feel positive about it.
Colleague Ashley Lecheminant works in the Brighton Hospital's catering department. He's also received the vaccine.
We're going to defeat this coronavirus now, and that we're going to have it's going to be like a new beginning.
Britain says no corners were cut in approving the safety of the vaccine and that it is 95% effective in stopping COVID-19 illness. Yet 2 healthcare workers suffered allergic reactions to the injection Wednesday, though doctors say they both had a history of allergies and this wasn't unusual. It's hoped 4 million doses will be given out before the end of the year. Those over 80, plus health workers and nursing home staff, are the first in line.
We don't yet know if the vaccine only prevents illness from COVID-19 or if it will also prevent transmission of the virus, and that could prove key in tackling the pandemic.
Those questions will be answered in the coming months. Many of those taking the vaccine have been self-isolating for several months. While there is palpable relief, Britain's chief medical officer voiced a note of caution.
I want to be very clear, for the next 3 months we will not have sufficient protection. We're going through the most difficult time of year for respiratory infections.
Across Britain, hospitals are still admitting thousands of patients with COVID-19, and hundreds are still dying every day. There are fears that public adherence to social distancing and lockdown rules may fall as the vaccination programme begins. Recent polls suggest half of Britons have safety concerns, and 1 in 3 may refuse to take the vaccine. Back in Brighton, nurse Leo Kiano feels lucky to get the vaccine compared to friends and family in the Philippines.
Sometimes it's only the privileged people can have the vaccine back home. If you got money, if they're going to pay for it, if the government will provide for it, you know. But we don't know really. That's why we're hoping that it's going to be accessible to everyone.
It's hoped other promising vaccines will also soon be approved. Britain is off to a head start, and the government says it hopes life could be back to normal by the spring. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
California, the most populated state in the United States, is undergoing a surge in COVID cases, prompting the governor to issue a regional stay-at-home order. Some businesses are fighting back, saying the lockdown is unfair. VOA's Elizabeth Lee has more from Los Angeles.
Signs are everywhere that life in California is again under lockdown. Either by state or local mandate, some of California's most populated regions are under a stay-at-home order, this time through the Christmas holiday.
It's not about me, it's about them. I feel bad for them.
Under the new order, restaurants must close their outdoor dining area and only serve delivery and takeout orders. Some restaurant owners are saying no.
We're not going to abide by those orders. We cannot survive with takeout and delivery alone because we're giving 30 cents on every dollar through delivery up to the Silicon Valley apps.
Many small business owners say this stay-at-home order is unfair. Retail stores can still operate indoors at 20% capacity, and the entertainment industry can continue. But nail and hair salons cannot. Barber Lou Garcia Reynoso received training to maintain a sanitary space and had complied with 2 shutdown orders since March, but not this time.
It's not because we don't think it's real. We want to take all the necessary precautions. We want to do all of those things. But when we see big business continuing to be able to work, even though their people don't have the training that we do, it makes it a little bit difficult for us to continue to comply.
Some business owners say it's also hard to follow orders from Governor Gavin Newsom when in November he attended a birthday dinner with a group of people after telling Californians not to have large gatherings.
People who are writing the rules are breaking them themselves, and that tells us 2 things. Number 1, that they don't care about us, and or number 2, that they don't care about the rules or that things aren't serious enough for them to feel as if they should be following the rules.
Well, I want to apologize to you because I need to preach and practice, not just preach and not practice.
The California governor says the sharp increase in hospitalizations, stretching resources, is the reason why so many Californians need to stay home. California's stay-at-home mandate lasts at least 3 weeks and begins in any of the 5 regions in the state when hospital intensive care unit capacity drops below 15%.
The problem is we don't have enough staff to take care of everyone. And that's really when things get dangerous in a hospital, is when we don't have enough staff to care for everyone who is very ill.
I think everybody needs to observe and obey all laws. I think that there are repercussions that could occur, certainly for the restaurants and really anybody who's licensed to do work by any state agency or county agency, that if they defy the laws, then their business licenses can be taken away.
But law enforcement officials in several Southern California counties say they will not be enforcing the stay-at-home order.
The Riverside County Sheriff's Department will not be blackmailed, bullied, or used as muscle against Riverside County residents in the enforcement of the governor's orders.
As small businesses anticipate the economic fallout from the lockdown, doctors are bracing for what the Christmas holiday will bring. Governor Newsom says he does not anticipate another wave of COVID to hit the state because vaccines are on the way. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Los Angeles.
A documentary by filmmaker Rick Burns and historian Gretchen Sorin traces the racial profiling African Americans have encountered on the road since slavery. VOA's Penelope Pulu spoke with the film's creators.
Driving While Black, a documentary by Rick Burns, chronicles the discrimination and violence African Americans have often encountered while driving.
In order to understand what's happening today, we felt strongly that you had to go all the way back to slavery, because that's the point where freedom is denied and mobility is denied.
The film documents how during the U.S. antebellum era, plantation owners employed slave patrols to monitor and punish slaves who tried to escape. It portrays these slave catchers as a precursor to white supremacists and some local sheriffs of the post-slavery Jim Crow era who targeted African American motorists from the 1920s to the 1960s.
Liberty is locomotion. It was a form of self-empowerment. You drive, automobile. You get to go where you want, when you want, not sit in the back of the bus, but also an opening to a whole world of challenge as you now must navigate this spaces where African mobility is seen as worrisome and unpleasant and to be stopped by a large cohort of white Americans.
Perils grew for black motorists at night.
So one of the hazards of driving was encountering people who were less interested in you being in that particular neck of the woods. And I say neck of the woods, a neck in the woods, watch out for, being lynched or being harassed or terrified.
How do you navigate the segregated highways of America if you're an African American, where if your daughter needs to go to the bathroom, if you need to put gasoline in your automobile, if, God forbid, you have a medical emergency, where are you going to sleep? Where are you going to eat? Where are you going to get your hair done?
The Negro Motorist Green Book listed such places. It was published in 1936 by New York postal carrier Victor Hugo Green and put small African American businesses across the country on the map. Eventually, says Rick Burns, the expansion of America's highways offered a level of protection to African American drivers, giving them alternatives to state and local roads. However, the film shows African American drivers continue to be racially profiled and disproportionately likely to be stopped by the police.
And so if people want to say, what is this thing, structural racism, systemic racism, which has this kind of abstract quality at first glance. It's not abstract, it's profoundly concrete.
Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, thanks for watching.